Welcome to Magic Arcanum. I'm Ryan Gomez, and I'm so glad you're here because it's story time. Ravnica Allegiance is upon us, and the set is full of interesting story bits, so let's get right into it. First, a quick refresher. We are on Ravnica, where life is structured around 10 different guilds, and each one is made up of 2 colors of mana, working together towards common goals. In Guilds of Ravnica, we got a closer look at 5 of those 10 guilds, and now, with Ravnica Allegiance, we're getting cards to support the other 5. The Azorius Senate, that's the white and blue guild. These are the lawyers and politicians and general fun police on Ravnica. They create the rules that govern life on the plane, and then they work with the Boros Legion to have those rules enforced. Until recently, they were led by a sphinx named Isperia, until she was turned to stone by a planeswalker named Vraska. Into this vacuum of power steps another planeswalker, Dovin Baan. He's a Videlkin from Kaladesh with blue skin and 6 fingers on each hand, and his special talent is identifying the weakness in anything. From his new position at the head of the Azorius, he'll be able to identify and exploit all of the weaknesses in the structure of Ravnica itself. More on that in a minute. Opposing him from the shadows is Lavinia. She got a card the last time we visited Ravnica, and her job back then was assisting Jace as he assumed the powers of the Living Guild Pact. She knows about the Gatewatch, and she oversees their stays when they're on Ravnica. She's kind of the Alfred to Jace's Batman, if that makes sense. This makes her uniquely positioned to understand exactly how much trouble Ravnica is now in, which we'll come back to that too. If the stuffy bureaucracy of the Azorius is not your thing, take a look at the Gruul clans. This is the red and green guild, and they love to raid and harass and disrupt life for the more civilized members of Ravnican society. Now, they weren't always that way. A long time ago, they were charged with preserving and protecting the natural wild spaces on the plane, but as the city kept growing, their territory kept shrinking. As outsiders to general society, the Gruul lack any sort of formalized leadership and instead tend to follow whoever among them is the biggest and strongest at the moment. That used to be Borborigmos. Just put it up on the screen. This guy used to be him. The Planeswalker Domri raid challenged this big guy, and while the Cyclops lost, he wasn't killed, he just fled once he lost the respect of all the Gruul clans. Domri was introduced to us on our last visit to Ravnica, and he's kind of unique among planeswalkers thanks to his young age. That's because part of the Gruul rite of passage is being buried alive. The idea is that you will dig your way out better and stronger than you were when they put you in there. During his burial, Domri panicked and his spark ignited, and he had his very first planeswalk, which took him to Naya. He didn't spend much time there, though. Instead, he came right back to Ravnica and began what would be best described as managerial training for the Gruul clans. Now, he's joined by a centaur shaman named Nikya, believer in the old ways, which currently prophesizes the end rays, a sort of grand apocalypse that's going to destroy all of the buildings on Ravnica. A crucial part of this prophecy is the return of Ilharg the Raiseboar. This is like a god pig who's going to show up and wreck all the buildings, and they talk about him on some other cards. He's just a giant walking pulled pork sandwich, if you ask me. While we're talking about worship, let's hit up the Orzhov Syndicate. This is the black and white guild, and they kind of act as a bank / church / mafia for all of Ravnica. A planeswalker named Kaya has just assumed control of the guild after using her natural talents to assassinate the Ghost Council that had been calling the shots from beyond the grave. Ooh. Kaya is a blade for hire. She can phase herself through solid objects, and she really hates it when the undead stick around longer than they're supposed to. This makes her ideally suited for ghost assassinations, and you would be amazed how often that is relevant in the Magic story. Anyway, waiting in the wings is a woman named Teysa Karlov. We've seen her before on 2 of our visits to Ravnica, acting as a representative of the Obzedat. That's the Ghost Council that used to rule the Orzhov. Teysa is now looking to assume her own rightful position as ruler of the Orzhov, but Kaya has been busy slaughtering the undead, many of whom were enslaved to or indebted to the Orzhov Syndicate. With each eliminated ghost, the Orzhov loses some of its power and influence, so eventually Teysa's going to have to step in here and try to preserve what remains of her wealth and the status of her family. So these three guilds, the Azorius, the Gruul, the Orzhov, have something in common. They've all recently been taken over by planeswalkers who were acting under orders from Bolus. He's an elder dragon and currently the big bad guy for the entire Magic storyline. We're not even sure what he's trying to do on Ravnica. We just know that he's been acting through these planeswalker agents to upset the natural balance of things and bring the guilds to the brink of war with one another. Even among the guilds that stand against him, there are still internal conflicts that are going to make things difficult for the home team. The Simic Combine is the green and blue guild. In addition to being the doctors and medical practitioners, they also love to experiment on life forms of all type, often creating weird hybrids and mutants with all sorts of unnatural abilities. Hopefully your insurance covers crab claw surgery. A merfolk named Zagana had been the prime speaker for the Simic the last time we visited Ravnica, but she has since stepped down from that role and been replaced by Vannifar, an elf ooze wizard. Oh, the Simic, they love to use the same knife for their peanut butter and their jelly, I can tell. So anyway, Vannifar has the Simic focusing on their Guardian project, which is designed to help their members adapt to any scenario and help them be ready for every challenge, aka be able to win every fight. And that is going to be probably pretty useful in the coming months. But Zagana is more of a let nature take its course and maybe give it a gentle nudge every now and then kind of a fish. And she's also more open to talking with the other guilds. She's been doing so behind Vannifar's slimy back. Saving the best for last, we've got the Cult of Rakdos. And being a storyteller and entertainer myself, I cannot help but love this red and black guild and their collection of sharp objects. Their leader has never really changed, and that's because the guild is named after him. That's Rakdos, an ancient and powerful demon. We've seen him twice before, just like Teysa and previous visits to Ravnica, and both of his cards let you know exactly what he's all about. Bolus has not been able to infiltrate the guild, most likely because the followers are so devoted to Rakdos, and they just want to provide the demon with some good entertainment. There is at least one entertainer, though, who wishes she got more attention, and that's Judith, the Scourge Diva. She's started to kind of earn her own following, and maybe someday she'll have enough fans to unseat Rakdos himself, but not if they all get killed in this giant war with Bolus and his army of Eternals. So those are the 5 guilds we get to see in Ravnica Allegiance. 3 are under the thumb of Bolus, and the other 2 have their own internal conflicts. Things are kind of a mess all over, huh? Well, we're not done yet. Let's take a look at some of the story spotlight cards from the set. We have to guess at the order that they go in. I think first is Kaya's Wrath. It shows Kaya killing the Obzedat, the ghost council that rules the Orzhov Syndicate. It's her first step in becoming able to rule that guild. This is a callback to the original Wrath of God card, which also destroyed all creatures. You might hear that referred to as a board wipe or sweeper. The idea being that a control deck would sweep away all the little aggressive creatures before they can overwhelm it. After that, I think we get Ethereal Absolution, which kind of continues Kaya's mini arc of ascending to leadership. It shows her still working alongside Teysa, although I am unsure how long that partnership's actually going to hold together. I'm a little less sure of what comes next, but I think it's Rampage of the Clans. This one shows Domri, Nikia, and the Gruul clans smashing their way downtown. It's likely Bolus is counting on this warpath of destruction to kind of act as a smokescreen for his arrival to Ravnica. If everyone's distracted by the rampaging Gruul clans, he'll be free to move about the plane and start working on his master plan. Which means Emergency Powers is the last of these story spotlight cards. I think this one shows Dovin using the rampaging Gruul clans as an excuse to sort of enact maybe like a martial law kind of a thing. This might even let him suspend the powers of the Guild Pact and neutralize Jace before Nicol Bolas arrives on the plane. You can see the distinct horns of Nicol Bolas in the art here, which may mean that Dovin Baan is communicating with him directly or sending a signal that it's time to open the planar bridge. This ties in neatly with the card's Addendum ability, because the last time we saw Nicol Bolas' Planeswalker card, he cost 7 mana to summon. I expect his next one will be the same, or maybe less. There are some other cards in the set that have a strong story connection, even if they aren't given the story spotlight watermark. Dovin's Acuity confirms the walkers we already know to be working for Nicol Bolas, but there are 2 missing from his list. We know Tezzeret is loyal to the dragon, and he's currently holding the Planar Bridge and the Immortal Sun, 2 artifacts that are going to be key in the coming war on Ravnica. Nicol Bolas has also enslaved Liliana Vess per the fine print on her contract for immortality. It's unclear to me why Dovin would not be counting those 2 unless he's only counting the forces on Ravnica, but then he shouldn't be counting Nicol Bolas yet. Or should he? The card Font of Agonies does have flavor text attributed to Nicol Bolas, so maybe he is already on the plane and he's just doing a really good job of staying out of sight. If that's true, it would explain why the Sphinxes on the plane are having increasingly concerning visions. Maybe the presence of Nicol Bolas disrupts the magic on the plane and the Sphinxes are attuned to it. That could explain the dire prophecies coming from the Sphinx of Foresight and Sphinx's Insight. Now, if he is already on the plane, what has he been doing this whole time? I'm going to submit my pet theory. I think Nicol Bolas is interested in gods. He's already got a few under his employ from Amonkhet, but if he can dig up and enslave a few more on Ravnica, he could then take them to fight Erebos, the god of death, on Theros. If Nicol Bolas can conquer death, he would have nothing left to fear, and he would become the single most powerful character in all of Magic. But that is just a wild idea, right? Well, we've already got cards that mention the Raise Boar, and Priest of Forgotten Gods would suggest that there's even more we know nothing about. The oceans of Ravnica were thought to be lost until merfolk one day started appearing out of holes that led to an underground sea, and the erstwhile were a buried and forgotten group of zombies that showed up again when Vraska reactivated them. So there are mysteries still waiting to be discovered on Ravnica. Maybe Nicol Bolas has been digging and letting the surface tear itself apart so he can keep exploring the underground without being interrupted. What do you guys think? Am I way off base here? Let me know down in the comments, and while you're typing that up, I will leave you with one last little Easter egg here. Look at Shimmer of Possibilities. Down there, reflected in that puddle, is Jace and Liliana, enjoying a lovely stroll through the sunny streets of Ravnica. In a different timeline, maybe they would have been close friends or even more. But in the storyline in front of us now, they are on opposite sides of the biggest war that's ever gonna come to Ravnica. Will they both make it through alive? Will they even get to see each other again? All I know is, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the great stories you'll only find here on Magic Arcanum. I'll see ya.